This is the second time Armin Maier has joined me, and he has joined me again. This time it's a bit different. Today we're talking about more experiences that you see behind the scenes, maybe the life of footballers that might not be told elsewhere. Maybe the likes of Mbappe can have the lavish lifestyles, but people that are just playing professionally at maybe a bit of a lower level might not get the opportunities and might not have the financial backing and certain financial securities that other people have. Armin, welcome to the show. Welcome back.
Yeah, hey, thank you very much for having me a second time. I feel very honored to be back on the show.
Well, as I said to you, it's an absolute privilege to have you on. Last time we got you on, it went very, very viral, and in my opinion anyway, it hit a lot of places. And actually, it was very popular in the countries like Asia because of your Singaporean and Malaysian heritage. And just for those, if you're new, make sure to subscribe, watch the previous interviews and many more. But of course, let's try and get to 200 subscribers and more on other channels as well. Armin, talk to me then. Tell me a bit about yourself.
So my name is Armin Maier. I'm 26 years old, from Germany originally, but I was born in Singapore. I have a bit of a Singaporean background. My mom is from there. I was born there. I grew up in Germany, and then at the age of 18, I made the jump to Singapore to start off my professional career. And then since then, I've played in 5 different countries: Germany, Malaysia, Singapore, Iceland, and Switzerland. And yeah.
I mean, look, people might come into football and say, I played for Tottenham Academy age 13. You started off at the age of 13 in Dortmund's academy. So a very big academy, the second biggest club in Germany. Talk to me about that. We spoke about that last time, but let's just touch upon that and what emotions were going through you at 13 years of age.
Yeah, at the time it was a huge thing. At the time, Dortmund was German champions. They just got crowned German champions for the second time, if I'm not wrong. And it was at the time the best club in Germany, and with also an amazing youth development system, with the likes of Mario Götze and stuff like that coming through the ranks. So it was amazing at the time to be scouted by them on just a regular normal tournament, which I didn't expect anyone to be there. And yeah, it was amazing, to be attached to such a huge club.
People who may have followed your journey, but people who may be new to you and not know who you are as much as other people. You debuted in the senior football in the 6th tier at the age of 17, a matter of years after this Dortmund trial. But the space in between that, the trial to now playing senior football at 17, what happened in those few years?
Yeah, I mean, at the time, it was the situation with Dortmund was that, it was far away and I couldn't, there wasn't a real perspective for me there long term. So I decided to just stick around my area and play at the highest level possible there. And yeah, it was just a few years of regular club football at the second highest level, so just below the youth Bundesliga at the time, and preparing for senior football really.
What would you class the German youth system as? I mean, obviously, as we said, Dortmund, you spent there for a year. But you look at it now and you look at it back then. Has there been changes? And if so, have they been positive or negative?
Yeah, I feel there has been changes. I mean, it's changing all the time. At the time, I feel that, Germany brought out a lot of young talents, which over the past few years, I think since the World Cup win in 2014, there's been a stop to that a little bit, because maybe because of the success they were too sure and they didn't evolve, and in football it's constantly changing. You always have to evolve, so in the recent years Germany has failed to produce top talents for the international stage, but I think now they've realized that, and now they're slowly looking to make changes again, and hopefully in a few years we'll see the results again.
Well, as we said, we did an interview, I think it was a matter of months ago, and as we said, that went really well. And we spoke about street football, and that was what it kind of came down to. We kind of made a conclusion that street football is producing less talent in more of a technical sense, where they might be able to not be the Mesut Ozils anymore, where they've changed and having to adapt. You still stand by that, right?
Yes, 100%. I think, street football, that is the real football to me, Nowadays, it's becoming less and less, with all the new generation, smartphones and stuff like that. A lot of distractions for the young kids nowadays. And yeah, I feel that, people spend less time outside with their friends, enjoying, having fun, doing tricks, learning skills, getting touches on the ball. It's not a positive development, Nowadays, it's more about, club football and tactics and stuff like that. But football is a skill based game. You know, you need to have skills. You can be as tactically good as as you want, and physically strong and fit, but you still have to have some skills on the ball. So that is crucial.
We can talk about that now. We can talk about Euro 2024 being held in Germany, a place, in the centre of Europe, so there wouldn't be too much of a problem getting fans in and out, of course. You're in a group with Scotland, Hungary and Switzerland. I mean, a group that you should be winning, but we'll talk about the history in a second. But what would you make out of this group stage? You must be surely topping that, maybe with 9 points.
100%. And Germany has to top that group 100%. I think obviously that opposition is maybe on paper not up to the German standard, the German team, but they're surely going to give a good fight, and it's not going to be easy. But definitely Germany on home soil, especially, the Euros are going to be in Germany, so with the home crowd, definitely everyone expects them to top the group 100%.
I mean, we talk about Hungary. They beat England twice in the Nations League, and they basically relegated them into the Nations League B, which, to be honest, I don't really have too much of an opinion on. I mean, obviously, we lost and it's embarrassing. But however, the Nations League isn't a major tournament. This is a major tournament. And for your perspective, from other Germans' perspectives, it's good to see that it's being held in one country. We saw 2020 or 2021 when it got pushed back. It was a bit difficult because England played a lot of times in Wembley and in England, but then had to move to Italy to go and play a game versus, I think it was Italy. So it's good to see it being held in one country. And then moving on, so you go through this group with 9 points, and then you play a second-tiered team out of the other groups. Again, where would you expect to finish? Obviously, it's a bit of a blind test. You don't know who could come next. It could be England, could be anyone. But where would you expect Germany to finish at the Euros?
I mean, I try to be realistic. Of course, as a German, we all hope that the Germans are going to win it or at least make it to the final. I think at this point of time, I think if we reach the semis would be very, very good already. But my realistic expectation is maybe quarterfinals, and then it could be tough because looking at the other groups, you could face some big names early on. So, yeah, it's not going to be easy for sure.
You mentioned the 2014 World Cup win, and ever since then, it's gone downhill for Germany, as we can say.
Yes.
In the World Cup of 2022, they finished third with 4 points. It's not good, and this is a very similar team to what will be starting out in Berlin and in Germany. However, you see with the youth, and we mentioned the youth and the lack of street football, you've got Musiala, though, leading the way. I mean, surely, and Leroy Sané really starting to pick up form. These young players maybe are proving your point wrong, that maybe they've found a different way to adapt instead of playing street football.
Yeah. No, I mean, you made a good example there with, Jamal Musiala is an interesting one because he's German. He plays for Germany, but actually he was brought up in the English football system. So I think he was brought up he was at Chelsea. He grew up in Germany, then he moved back to the UK, played a bit for Chelsea, and then at a later age, 17, something like that, 16, 17, Bayern Munich brought him back. So he's actually, I think he actually proves my point right that Germany fails to create a lot of creative, skilled footballers. If you look at a typical German player, you wouldn't think of someone who does a lot of skills. So he's definitely an exception to that.
And it's good to see, though. It's good you're getting a variety. Maybe he could have chosen to represent England, but from a German's perspective, to see a different player, a different someone who's taken a different path to the national team, to see a different variety. Right, back to you then. So you moved to Switzerland's second division. You stayed there for half a season. Again, talk to us about that, and then we'll talk about the transition. And what about the climate over there as well? Because, again, a bit of a cold place at times, bit of a hot place. It's a bit of an iffy one for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Switzerland came after Singapore for me. So I was in Singapore in 2017. I was quite happy there. But then, Singapore is very strict with dual citizenship and stuff like that. And they also have a military service that everyone has to serve, basically. So they made me decide. They wanted me to decide between the German passport and the Singaporean citizenship. And I had to choose the German one because my family was still there. And also because I still had ambition to have a good career in Europe, So, I left Singapore and then I went to Switzerland, which was a bit of a culture shock, having lived in Asia, a bit Southeast Asia, very warm climate, always hot, always humid, and then to Switzerland, which can be very cold at times, snowy. It's definitely not easy to adapt. It's really the complete opposite. Yeah.
So half a season later, around 6 months, JDTFC, and this is a really proud moment for
Yes.
you. And I can see the smile on your
Yes.
face because you got offered it by the Crown Prince to go over there and play,
Yes.
but
Yes.
you didn't play. And we'll talk about
Yeah.
this in a bit more depth later on with registration issues. But again,
Yeah.
you must have been so proud to get there. You got there, and then knowing you couldn't play, it must have been a heartbreak.
Yeah. Yeah. No, definitely. I mean, when I first got invited to trial there by the Crown Prince, I think one of the proudest moments in my life. I'll never forget. It meant so much to me and my family. To get invited by royalty, basically, to play for such a prestigious club that at the time already was such a huge club competing in the AFC Champions League. Just a huge honor, and it also comes with a huge responsibility that I felt at such a young age. Of course, later on, it was a heartbreak that I couldn't play. I couldn't feature in the games because of the foreigner rules and because of me not possessing a Malaysian passport yet, and therefore, being a foreigner, and there's a foreign quota, and that was full at the time. So I could only be a training player, which was obviously a heartbreak for me. Yeah.
But surely that sets an example to the clubs in Asia and the leagues over there that will make these decisions to limit the amount of foreign players that go over there. And I understand it; it's keeping their football alive, and it's keeping a lot of homegrown talent there as well. But surely that would change because, as we spoke about before, we spoke about China and we spoke about their limitation to foreigners' rules. But we've seen over there, we've got Oscar that's still over there, a world-class player that could still do a great job in the Premier League. Would you think that could change in the next few years where clubs and leagues in Asia would make their minds up to say, let's allow a few more foreigners to come over to allow people like you to go over there and play?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it keeps changing the foreigner rules. So, I mean, for me, my opinion is that you have to find a good balance. You have to have a good amount of quality foreigners. The very important is that they are quality, because there's no point bringing in a foreigner if a local player is better than him. The foreigners, they have to raise the standard, definitely, but also obviously you can't bring too many, because then the local players will suffer and they will get limited playing time, which will lead to less development for the local players. So you have to find a good mix. I think many leagues in Asia, it varies now, but in most leagues it's like 4 to 5. I think Saudi has much more now with all the money they have, which is a high risk for me, I think, because yes, the Saudi league is very interesting and it's gaining a lot of media attention now, but I don't know how that the impact it's going to have on the Saudi players, and also on the national team if they get less playing time. So, yeah, the most important thing is to find a good balance.
Like, I completely agree, and I feel like there should be a limitation, but that also maybe could be stretched out in a few areas, and maybe countries like Malaysia, Singapore, and over there on the other side of the world. From here, it's very different because we're in Europe. There's a lot more known talent that's recognised. That's the big thing, because when you're in Asia and you've been there before, obviously playing, training, and obviously going on holiday, do you see that there's talent that just doesn't get seen purely because of where they live, or am I just making that up?
No, definitely, you're right. 100%. Yeah, Asia is different than Europe. Europe is very well covered in terms of scouting. In Germany, you can live in the furthest corner somewhere up north, or I don't know where. You'll still, if you can play, someone will see you most probably, because the system just is made for that. They perfected that. In Asia, if you don't live in the big cities, if you live somewhere countryside, it's tough sometimes. You can be a great talent, but no one's going to see you. No one's going to scout you. And then, yeah, it's very unlucky. I feel sorry for those guys because the talent is there in Asia, definitely. There's so much talent I've seen over there, but they just don't have the same opportunities than their European counterparts, for sure.
And again, we'll talk about that later. Maybe there could be a bit of corruption going on behind the scenes, mafias, and a lot of corruption that could limit these players to having those opportunities. Yes. But if there was an enhancement of revenue and other things except for the fans, would there be fan support? Because you mentioned Saudi, and there's not so many fans over there. They're lacking that maybe fan bases and a bit of infrastructure as well. Do you see that could be a bit of an eye catcher? Have the big players gone over there, and had they gone over there and hired some big talents?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the fans are the most important thing in football. I know a lot of players. They actually go to Southeast Asia because in Southeast Asia you have quite a good good fan support. People they really love the players of their club, and they get really decent crowds over there. Compared to the Saudi league, I think the most attractive thing about the Saudi league is surely the money. But when it comes to those other countries, it's actually fans. Social media. I've seen like people blow up on social media just because they made a move to Malaysia or to Indonesia. It's similar with me. In Germany, I didn't have a huge following. Not a lot of fans or anything at all. And then I make the move to Southeast Asia, and my social media blows up. I get hundreds of messages, and that's also a reason players move there.
I mean, maybe that's where I've got to go to get out my page a bit more out there.
Yes,
So,
yes.
so Selangor FC, they hired a German coach. So now we spoke about that before because you got the link of German connections, and he
Yes.
wanted you, and he sniped you out. Do you know why he sniped you out? Did he see you playing in another league elsewhere?
Yeah, I mean we are a bit from the same region in Germany, near the Stuttgart region, and yeah, I mean he knew. I mean when he came to the league, when he signed for that club, he knew that there was another German, playing for another team, and yeah, I just approached him, and he said he knew me a little bit, and we got talking, and pretty quick we came to the conclusion that it would be a good idea actually for me to play for his team.
Mm. And, that went all right, didn't it? It's the most historical team in Malaysia. And
Yes.
again, a proud moment for you. So now you've gone from playing in a place where you couldn't have played because of registration to
Yes.
now probably thinking that you're on top of the world with two clubs and two separate people asking you specifically to join their team.
Yeah, definitely. It was nice. I then finally got to make my debut in the Malaysian league, and like you said, it's the most historical club. Yeah, they've been in the Asian Champions League final before many years back, so a huge history, huge fan base, which also comes with high expectation. But yeah, it was a great experience, great club, great people, great fans.
Talk to me, the debut in Malaysia. Tell us that story.
Yeah, unfortunately, at the time there was COVID hit early 2020, so there was like already limited spectators allowed and stuff. But still, it was amazing, and even though there wasn't as many fans allowed in the stadium, after the game, I got a lot of messages from fans because yeah, they were obviously watching on TV and stuff. And yeah, it was tough. The Malaysian league is very underrated. People in Europe might think it's not good or stuff like that, but trust me, it's not easy. It's very hard to play under these conditions. Yeah, like they bring quality foreign players. So if you play in one of the central positions, as I did, I do, you always get to play against a foreigner. You compete against a quality foreigner, and then yeah, I mean it's very hot. It's very humid. So it's definitely very tough to play in that league.
Limitations because of the culture and the climate, would you have said?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, everything is different over in Asia. Different climate, different culture, different food. It's a completely different world, and you really have to experience it and feel it yourself to understand how different it is. It's not easy. A lot of quality foreign players go there and they struggle because of the reasons. They can play 100%, but you really need to be mentally very strong and determined to succeed over there. Otherwise, you'll fail 100%.
What I find, right, with Asia and Africa and South America as well, is we see a lot of healthy eating food, a lot of fruit, a lot of meat, a lot of exercise. It's quite mandatory to do a lot of exercise. And then we come over to Europe and America, to just name one country, who seem to promote the worst side of the food, the crisps, the sugar, the high diets, the no exercise. You coming from Asia and you seeing that, and you've gone to both sides of the world to see this. Do you think that's why maybe Europeans come over and struggle in countries like Malaysia? Because it could be the food that they're eating that mean that they don't perform to a high enough standard?
Yeah, it definitely it takes a huge toll on players, and then in Asia, a lot of times I've seen it also with myself. They like to cook with a lot of spices, which actually is quite healthy, but a lot of players they can't take it. And also in Asia, I mean, they eat a lot of rice, for example, stuff like that, which maybe European players, they're more used to pasta and stuff like that. So it's those small things, and they add up all together, and then at the end, they make a difference.
Where would you rather play? Would you rather play in Europe or would you rather play in Asia?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think in terms of the overall level and just if you look at the developmental side, I think Europe is still the best place to be when it comes to football. It's still the highest level. The other Asia and other continents as well, America, Australia, and stuff like that, they're catching up for sure. So in terms of the level, definitely would be Europe. But in terms of the in terms of the lifestyle, the love of the people, the fans and stuff, I would say that I actually like Asia a lot more.
Mm. Well, it sounds like it. You're persuading me to go over there. Right.
Yeah.
You went to
Yeah.
Iceland. You went to Iceland, and this is where things became quite troublesome for you. And again, we'll
Yes.
talk about the coach without mentioning names. And just talk to me about that. So, without talking about the coach right now,
Mhm.
why did you
Mhm.
decide to go to Iceland? Why was that the ideal choice for you?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I came off. I came from Malaysia. I came back to Europe, and then I wanted something different again. You know, I'm always looking for new experiences,
Hmm.
new adventures.
Yeah.
And so I've been in Asia. I've been in Central Europe, so Germany, Switzerland. But I wanted something different in Europe, and then Scandinavia came to my mind. So together with my agent, we were on the outlook for something in Scandinavia. I had a few looks at clubs in Norway and then Iceland. And I actually I didn't even know too much about Icelandic football before that. And then this club was interested. They made an offer to my agent. They flew me over. I had a look, and I was surprised. I didn't know much about Iceland, only a little bit about a national team because they were in the Euros and the World Cup, and it turned out to be actually really great over there. Like amazing people, speak great English, very welcoming. The country, the infrastructure, it's such a small country, but they did a really good job in terms of producing great footballers. Actually, hence why such a small country, is able to actually make it to the World Cup, and qualify for the World Cup. So yeah, Iceland is actually a great place.
To move as a footballer, professional footballer, how does that come about for you? Is it your agent that would message you and say, I've got an opportunity in Sweden, would you like to have a look? And if so, what do you think when all these offers are on the table?
Yeah, so most of the time it's through agents, but sometimes also through like personal contacts.
Mm.
You see, I've been around a lot. I've played in many teams with many different foreigners and coaches, and sometimes the coaches or the players themselves, they'll message you and ask me what's my current situation, and they're still looking for a midfielder or something like that. That's some of how some of the opportunities come about, and then also of course. I have a few agents. I have an agent in the Europe region, in the Asian region, and I'm also in constant communication with them. So whenever a team is looking for a player of my profile, then he'll push me forward, and then yeah, that's how those moves come about.
So Iceland came to an end after a matter of months. To then go back to Germany's fourth tier to reunite with your family
Yes.
after spending quite a
Yes.
few years abroad. Again, we spoke
Yes.
about this before, but to not see your family in so long, to now be back home, that feeling must have been great.
Yeah, it was nice. I mean, I spent so many years overseas in different countries, and everything was great. But I'm a family person, and I always like to be close to my family, and especially after the whole COVID period and everything, which I didn't see my family for like 2 years or something like that. I wanted to be with them again, and then this opportunity came up in the Munich region to play in the fourth tier over there, which is a great level.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I could combine that, the family and the football, which was
Mm.
nice.
In January 2023, so now we've just come out of COVID. 2022 was the last brief of it, and in Australia actually it was quite bad because they shut down the country completely, and I think it was only around
Yes.
this time that where they opened it up. The borders
Yes.
back open to the public and Europeans and elsewhere. The second tier of Australia, there was delays in your visa, and that
Yes.
ultimately meant that you couldn't go and you terminated the move.
Yes.
Again, we'll talk about this later on, but just explain to us what happened. And again, why would you go from Germany, seeing your family, to now Australia?
Yeah. Yeah. So I was a bit in Germany again, and then I was again looking for my next adventure. And then actually, my agent told me that this club from Australia was interested. I had a very good conversation with the head coach, and they wanted to bring me in, and then we discussed all the final details, and everything was perfect. I signed the contract digitally on my phone. I signed everything. Was supposed to fly over to Australia, and then the only thing we were waiting for was obviously the visa, because Australia is quite strict with their immigration policy. So I was just waiting for the visa, and it took quite a while, because the things that you mentioned, COVID and stuff, they are really careful who they let into their country. So they do their due diligence checks, and yeah, it took a while, and then the club just informed me that it takes too long, and they're really sorry, but they have to move on and go with another player. And I was shocked because I had already signed the contract and everything. But yeah, they just didn't respect the contract and just went with another player, and I was just left there.
You ended up going back to Malaysia to train with the club
Yes.
JDTFC. And again, we don't
Yes.
really need to talk about that because we spoke about that before.
Yeah.
But just quickly, the facilities over there in that club, they must have been great, hence why you returned.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think JDT has probably one of the best facilities in Asia, if not the best. It's world class. What the Crown Prince has built for that club and the people of Malaysia. It's a state of the art facility that I think even I know. I've very well traveled and I've seen many facilities of Bundesliga clubs and such, but I don't think anyone comes close when it comes to their facilities. So top-notch facilities, and yeah, the Crown Prince, what he's doing over there is just amazing. And through my good relationship to him, he allowed me to train with his prestigious club. So I'm very thankful.
Before we talk about everything that we're going to talk about today and the dark side of football, as you would like to have called it, you're 26 years of age. What would be the plan this year, this season, but also heading into next season, knowing that this season is slowly coming to an end?
Yeah. So after training with JDT a little bit, I then got this opportunity to return back to Germany, to the Munich region, to the 6th tier. And I took it, just to get some games and to be back with my family again. And yeah, let's see what happens. I mean, my contract runs out in the summer, and then let's see what's next. I'm always on the outlook. I'm always talking to people, overseas. So yeah, I mean, the plan is I always want to play at the highest level possible, and I'm always looking for new adventures. So if something comes about, surely I'll be very interested.
Absolutely. So now then, we spoke about Australia, but talk to me about this deal not coming through. You threatened to go to FIFA. I mean, you took this extremely seriously, as I would, as anyone should do. FIFA, you didn't actually end up going to them, but you threatened to do so, and for what reason?
Yeah, obviously. I mean, at first I was shocked, and I tried to talk to them and be like, just be a bit more patient and wait for the visa. It will definitely come. I don't see why I should be rejected. It will definitely come. Just give me a bit more time. And at the time, the season wasn't even, hasn't even started. But they wanted to bring in their foreign players early. So, basically, after I tried to talk to them in a nice way, and that didn't work. So then I obviously tried to be a little bit more harsh, and told them that if they want to do this, then I'll go to FIFA, because documents were signed, everything was signed. There was a signing fee. Not only me, but also my agent was supposed to be paid, was supposed to get a fee for making the whole deal happen, stuff like that. So there was a lot of money involved, and then so I wanted to go to FIFA, but then because it was the second division of Australian football, which is the National Premier League, which is a step below the A League, and it's not so well governed by FIFA. I was told by my agent, he advised me, to just leave it, and just forget about it, because obviously legal process takes time and also costs money. So I didn't want to waste my energy on that.
For me, Australia is weird because I spoke to somebody who's played in Australia and is out in Australia, and I think you know him, Hossein Elihai. And
Yes.
he was a really great guy to talk to. Spent a long time chatting to him about Australia and about elsewhere. And I was absolutely blown out of my mind to hear that Australia does not have promotions or relegations. And to me, that just sounds, I mean, how on earth? Maybe you could tell me, how can they have a football system without promotions and relegations?
Yeah, I think Australia is an amazing country. It's really an amazing country. But in terms of football, they're still very new to it. So football is now only slowly taking over and becoming a main sport over there. They have actually I think it's called Australian football, and they have other sports there that have always been ahead of football. So they're relatively new to it and still building their leagues and their league structure. So Australia is something definitely to look out for in the future, also because there's a lot of talent there. But it takes some time, to instill all these systems and stuff like that, promotion, relegation. Australia is also, you have to keep in mind, it's a very, very huge country. It's a huge, huge country. If you want to fly from one end to the other, these kind of things, they obviously also play a part, why things are the way they are. So it's not so easy, but definitely, I think in the future you'll see them do well.
I mean, look, we've seen with the women's, I think it was the World Cup, they went out there to New Zealand
Yeah.
and Australia, and there was quite a lot of support out there. I mean, a lot of from England fans and from other
Yes.
fans, but Australia as a whole, when you went there, I mean, you must have been expecting, had you signed there, to see quite a few fans at the stadiums.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, Australia. I think they have a huge passion for sports. As I said, I mean, there's other sports that are bigger than football over there, but it's definitely a growing sport. And I think also the women's national team, the women's game, which you just mentioned, is a huge factor for the growth of the passion for football. Because actually, the women's team of Australia is actually doing very, very well. You know, they're one of the top, I think, 10, 15 teams in the world, and they always compete very well in the World Cup. So yeah.
I mean, actually, let's stay on that topic. With the women's game in Asia, I mean, what's going on over there? Because we mentioned before about the Asian World Cup for the men's and, you know, Heung-min Son, Endo, all these great players that are playing in the Premier League. For the women, do you see a lot of support for their backing towards football?
I mean, it depends where in Asia. You know, Asia is big. There's many different countries, many different mentalities and cultures. I think if you go to places like Japan, China, Korea, I think the women's game there is a very, very, very developed and evolved. Whereas if you go to certain countries like Malaysia, maybe like Singapore, you know, it's a cultural thing actually that, you know, it's not normal for women to play football. You know, it's still seen as something that is not normal and not okay sometimes by the society. So it's a bit difficult in some places. Yeah.
So Iceland, and again, these stories that people are about to hear is just absolutely mind-boggling. Yeah. So you went to Iceland after expecting to be quite a good time there. I mean, you told me last time without telling me what happened in this situation that you didn't like the coach, and we left it at that. You mentioned the coach torturing players, and as we spoke about before, he's a former Stoke City manager. I mean, a really reputable coach, and he went over to Iceland, and he was a very old school manager. I mean, you experienced it. Tell me it.
Yeah, it was crazy. So, I mean, when I first got there, like I said, everything was great. People were amazing. Everything was great. And I thought, you know, that my relationship with the coach would be great as well, because he had a lot of experience. He had coached in England at such a big club like Stoke City. He has even coached the Icelandic national team. So very experienced guy. But with that experience also came a little bit of old-fashioned thinking. And he was, in many ways, he was very still old-fashioned. The way of training, the way he managed the players, he was extremely strict and extremely, he wanted to be an authority, really, you know. And I picked up, you know.
Does that work as players and coaches? Does that work to have the manager thinking that they're the big boss and you have to work under him?
I think with the newer generation that's coming up now, it doesn't work actually. You know, that maybe that used to work with the older generation because they were tougher and things were just different back then. But nowadays, with this younger generation, we had a lot of young players on the team. You have to, you can't just be an authority and strict and, you know, the big boss. You also have to be a friend to the players and sometimes, you know, put your arm around their shoulder and, you know, listen to them and stuff like that. And he didn't have that, and he didn't. He was just such an authority and you know, very, very strict to the players. And you know, I picked up an injury very early on. After a game, 90 minutes, you know, the games, they are very intense. The Scandinavian people are very physical. So I picked up a slight injury, and it would have been just a matter of days for me to recover, and then I would have been fine. But he didn't allow us to recover, you know. He made us run every single training session, crazy training methods. As a warm-up, we had to run like, I don't know, 15 or 20 laps around the field, like crazy stuff. And that just made my injury worse. And not only me, it was also other players. I played with a few other guys. Another guy who came from the UK, played at Chelsea. You know, he also picked up an injury, and we never really got to recover. And because we never really got to recover, we were never really fit. He got unhappier and unhappier, and he really put us under a lot of pressure. So normally when you're injured, you're supposed to rest and do rehab and all these kind of things. But he didn't allow us to rest. You know, because he was so angry with us, because we weren't fully fit, and because we couldn't play, he actually made us run with injuries, which is absolutely insane. If I think about it, I don't know how I did it, but it was absolutely insane. So I had a slight tear in my hamstring, something like that, a pull, a tear. And the physios also advised me, obviously, to rest first. But every morning we had to report to his office at 9 a.m. and he would tell us what we have to do. And then he would make us run around the field, and he would track our data with like GPS, how much we ran, and we had to run like 10 kilometers injured. It's absolutely insane. So that is something that, I think he's not even a bad coach in the sense of he knows his stuff. He's very experienced. The football side is good, but the man management is just so old school, and yeah, it was terrible. So I had to leave after a few months because it was unbearable, really.
We talk about managers and the way that they treat their players. I mean, Mikel Arteta, Gary O'Neill, Jurgen Klopp, and I love to say Gary O'Neill because he's a great English manager that's upcoming, and Totti over in Roma and his job that he's doing since Mourinho's been sacked. You see with these young managers how much that they treat their players with so much respect that they're not on any level apart from like this. No one's up here, no one's down here. They're on level par. And is that why you think the results get pushed even more? Where Wolverhampton Wanderers, for example, they have not been getting the best of results in recent years, but all of a sudden they're now up in the top 10 of the Premier League. Would you say that could play a part? I mean, obviously the players and the coaching and how they coach and the training methods are playing a part. But if you have faith in the manager and the manager has faith in you, does that mean you work harder automatically as a player?
Definitely. I think for me personally, I think man management is so much more important than, tactical knowledge and stuff like that. Obviously, at the highest level, you need to have it all. You need to, you have the tactical side covered and stuff like that. But you can be the best tactician, but if the player on the field is not willing to run and die for you, really, and go through hell for you, it's going to be tough, And you can see the coaches that they have great relationships with their coach. They are the most successful mostly. I mean, Germany, we have Jurgen Klopp. The players love him. They run for him. They die for him. And I think at the end of the day, that is the deciding factor. If you want to give something back to the coach.
So you went on trial with a Bundesliga 2 club, and you've been on trial in 15 other nations, which is just, again, there must be a record, and you must be up there somewhere, right? 15 sounds like quite a heavy number.
Yeah, it is.
And you went on trial there, and they told you that they liked you, and they wanted to train you over there for another week, and you were looking at apartments, and they just rejected you out of kind of nowhere. I mean, talk to me about what happened there. I mean, you did mention to me that the second week where you had to had your stay extended, it didn't go too much to plan for yourself. You don't think you played to the highest of your abilities, but maybe that's because you didn't end up getting the contract.
Yeah. It was actually when before the Switzerland move happened. So when I just returned from Singapore to Germany, and I was looking for a new challenge, and then I had a trial with this club through my agent who organized it. At the time, they were in the second Bundesliga, so Bundesliga 2, second highest level, very, very high level. And I had a trial with them, and it was just one trial. And then I did very well, I did very, very well. The coach loved me. He wanted to sign me straight away. He praised me. He told my agent that, we're gonna sign him and all that. And then I was so hyped. I was so happy, because that would have been an amazing step back to Germany. And at that level, it would have been amazing. But then, he said he has to speak to the management, and, things will take a little bit more time. And I was like, okay, no worries. Because he gave me that feeling that he really wanted me and stuff like that. And that everything was already, done and dusted, basically. And it's just a matter of days until we sign the contract. And then I also rejected other clubs because of that. I had other offers in Europe, but I rejected them. So they asked me to train for another week, and I was maybe too sure. I was young. I was too sure, I mean, now if I can give some advice to younger players, never be too sure, and always, never be too sure until there's black and white, until, you've put pen to paper, because people promise a lot and say a lot, but at the end, what counts is if you put pen to paper and black and white. So, I was too sure. And then maybe I didn't train 100% because I was too sure. And at the end of the day, I didn't end up signing. After the week, I didn't perform at my best because maybe also I was busy looking for apartments already. And I got so hyped, and then I was too over the moon with everything, and didn't perform anymore as well, And then, they actually didn't end up offering me. Another player came about that maybe found more interesting, or maybe didn't have this the financial requirements that I had. And then they went with him, and I was just left there without a club.
Again, a really crazy just experience, especially in such a high division like you mentioned. I mean, Bundesliga 2 is no messing around.
Yes.
It's quite a serious level.
Awesome.
But
Yeah.
what I'm always curious about, and for goalkeepers, I usually mention superstitions, maybe their left glove before the right. Maybe for you, it could be your left sock before your right sock. But for a game day or routine, I mean, building up to that may be a bit exciting, top of the league or whoever it may be. Talk to me about your game day routine from, the minute you wake up, arriving at the stadium, and what you got to do to get yourself in that focused mind.
Yeah. No, for me, the most important thing is the sleep beforehand. So I try to get a good 9 hours sleep. It depends on the kickoff time as well. So if it's an early kickoff, it differs from obviously when it's a late kickoff. If it's a late kickoff, try to get a nap or something like that. And then obviously the nutrition is a huge factor. So try to get as much quality nutrients into your body. Prepare yourself well, hydrate well, especially when you play in Asia. The hydration part is very important. Get your electrolytes in, because in Asia you sweat much more, so you have to prepare for that. Hydration, nutrition, sleep, and then before the game, maybe a little bit of music to hype myself up, to get in the zone. Some visualization, maybe. My favorite song, I don't know. I don't have a favorite song. I have maybe a playlist, a pre-game playlist with something a little bit harder, like rap songs, Eminem or whatever, stuff like that. To hype me up for the game, and then then I'm good to go.
Lithuania. I spoke to a Finnish centre-back who played in Lithuania for a year, and it's a funny story because he mentioned about joining this team, and it was I think it was a Finnish coach. It was a European coach, 100%, and he went into there with a cake because it was his birthday, and all these players that were so used to having, as you spoke about, Lithuania, former USSR, Soviet Union. He went in there with a cake to these players, and the players were like, "What's going on here? Is he trying to trick us? Why is he giving us a cake? Cake's not normal over here." And they were trying to tell him that it's normal. It's a bit of cake and just have the cake and be quiet, sort of thing. Well, you went to Lithuania and you said it was a very grey and boring place. I mean, I've seen a few pictures of it. It looks quite nice in the snow and the snow falling down on Riga, the capital. But overall, what would you rate your experience in Lithuania? And then we'll talk about the rough living conditions.
Yeah. To be honest, I think it's the landscape and stuff is beautiful. The landscape is beautiful in winter and summer. They have a lot of nice lakes and stuff like that. But other than that, I don't find it very enticing. I don't find it very interesting. It's very grey. It's still a fairly new country compared to the rest of Europe. So it used to belong to the Soviet Union for a very long time.
Yeah.
And it hasn't changed much. So people live in grey, old apartment complexes. And the apartment complexes I lived in when I was there, it looked pretty much like you would imagine it to be 50 years ago in Russia and in the Soviet Union. So everything very old and grey, and it's not easy over there. I mean, Lithuania, the people they are fine, but they don't speak the best English. Language is a very huge factor. Especially to feel well, to feel welcome. They're nice, but they don't speak very good English. And if you want to when I went for grocery shopping, when I wanted to buy food or whatever, it was not easy, because you look at the labels and you don't understand the thing, you don't know what you're even buying, stuff like that. All this together adds up, and it makes it made it not the best experience for me. So yeah.
The facilities, the stadiums, were they quite old as well, or do they need, were they top tier?
To be honest, in the capital, I think there's a few more modern stadiums, and I think they just built a new national stadium and stuff. But when I was there a few years back, everything was still very old. Everything was old. The dressing rooms, the fields, everything. So yeah, it wasn't easy. Mentally, you felt like a bit in a prison, or everything was grey, not colorful.
This is just out of this world. I mean, you're obviously a Singapore international, for those who don't know.
Yes.
You've played in many countries, and Mauritius was just one of them, off the coast of Africa. And the referee, you think, was doing a bit of cheating. But actually, you mentioned to me what happened, and people can make their own mind up, and you can let us know in the comments below. For me, I think it was a bit more maybe taken the wrong way. I mean, I completely understand. People understand what we're talking about. They should have got the ball back after a throw in because you kicked the ball out for an injury. However,
Yes.
that's not written in the rules. So to be fair to
Yes.
them, they're not breaking any rules, but they're breaking
Yeah.
sportsmanship behavior.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I mean, yeah, like you said, player. Also, it was in Africa, Mauritius. African referee as well. It was an important game, broadcasted on television. President was in the stadium. Their player was injured. We kicked the ball out. So obviously, you would expect that they would throw the ball back in
Yeah.
and pass it back to us. But suddenly, the striker didn't pass it back to us, but he dribbled towards our goal. And by the time we realized what he was actually up to, he had already scored, and the crowd was celebrating. And, it was a full national stadium in Mauritius in Africa. The Africans were going crazy, celebrating their national team. And we were like looking at each other, like, what's going on,
I can imagine.
We went to the referee and he said, and I mean, fair play. There's nothing he can do actually, because still abiding by the rules, but there's obviously unwritten rules in football, sportsmanship, that, if a team kicks the ball out because your player is injured, you give it back to them. And they just didn't respect that. So yeah, we had to. So after that, I learned that, play to the whistle. And if someone doesn't give the ball back, and, you just don't just watch him, but, just play to the whistle.
So all of the things that we've spoken about for now the last 46 minutes have been about you. And obviously we spoke about Germany and their hopes for the Euros. This is now what you, like, players and friends have experienced. And again, I think they just get a bit crazier from here. So we can start off with probably the most craziest one. I mean, club owners threatening players in Asia with guns.
Yeah. This sounds very surreal to people from Europe. They wouldn't understand what's going on behind the scenes in Asia. I think in Europe, overall, even at the lower levels, it's more or less, you won't find those kind of crazy stories. But the thing is, in Europe, clubs are very well organized in terms of the board and the club ownership. And mostly, like in Germany, we don't even have the situation that, a club belongs to just one man. A club, in a lot of instances, belongs to, the club. There's a president, there's different sponsors, and then the fans even own parts of the club. In Asia, it's mostly just one rich man who bought the club, who founded the club, who invests money in the club, and he has all the say. So in a lot of cases, it's rich men that maybe have obtained their money in not legal ways, however. And so these are the kind of people you deal with sometimes. And if you do well and everything, they treat you well normally. If they're happy, they're going to treat you well. But if they're not happy, they want to get rid of you, the team is losing, crazy things happen over there. So yeah, I've heard stories of friends, close friends, they've been threatened. There's in certain third world countries with actually quite good leagues, good leagues where you can earn good money. But yeah, they've been threatened with weapons and stuff like that by club owners. Their passports have been held back, so they couldn't leave the country, they couldn't leave the club, to put pressure on the players. So these kind of things that would be unimaginable in Europe, they happen in Asia.
You mentioned to me earlier on that this happens in India as well, that this has been an experience that you've seen in India. And we can talk about India in the fact that I do have a feeling, just a slight feeling, that there's 1 billion people in that country, over 1 billion people. Surely there's some footballing talent out there. Surely you can get a squad of 23 and surely they can compete for the World Cup. And on that note, would you expect them to be doing that within the next few years?
Yeah, it's difficult. They have so much potential, but the thing is, India is a huge country, huge population, but the main sport over there is cricket. And I think they have other sports, which are still above football. The potential is definitely there, all around the world, where in whichever country I've been, I've seen so much talent, but what I've failed to see in some countries is the system, the developmental system for those talents. So you can have the best talent in the world, but if you don't have the right, upbringing, the right football system, if there's corruption and stuff like that, if players don't get, good players don't get fair opportunities, it's going to be very, very tough. So Yeah, for India, I think it's going to be tough. They first have to build their infrastructure. They first have to build their league system. They have a good top league, the Indian Super League, but below that, the youth levels, they don't. I don't think they have a proper like youth league still, and then the lower leagues below the Super League and stuff like that is still lacking. So it will take time.
I mean, just imagine every country, all the countries that with like China, India, all the countries that maybe lack the players right now. And I think it was you or somebody else mentioned to me that people get disrespected when they look at FIFA and they see an Indian player with a rating of 53. But to understand that that player has gone through a very similar process to a European through clubs and trials, to go on FIFA is a huge deal. And they get disrespected quite often because they're often they're ranked the lowest in the game or what have you. But for me, I do think there's going to be a big influx of Indian players on the big level, whether it be maybe the first Premier League player who could be Indian who hits the world stage. So now, and I promise to people who are watching this stuff is not made up. This is just crazy footballing stuff that you won't hear on mainstream media. That's why it's so good. And please do hit the subscribe button. Working in football with agents is usually quite a handy thing. For players, it would be the idea that they could have the potential to move elsewhere, and maybe that even may be meaning moving agents to move to Asia or moving agents to move to Africa. And this happened to one of your friends or one of your colleagues who ended up going to the airport. The flights were paid for them, and no one was there to pick them up.
Yeah, that's another crazy thing. There you can see you sometimes you really can't trust people. Even your agent, who you would think would never cheat on you and whatsoever. Yeah, a friend of mine, actually, a few friends have had these experiences, not only one. They were promised by agents, that they're gonna get picked up on at the airport and then be driven to the club and stuff like that, and everything is gonna be perfect and prepared. And so these players, they fly over to different countries, take the long journey, they arrive at the airport and just no one shows up. And they're trying to call agents, text their agent, and call people, and no one responds. And since then, they've just never heard of that agent again. So they're just left, at the mercy of things and at the airport, and they don't know what to do. So can you imagine, as a player, you're excited, you travel to a new country, you're excited for a new opportunity, and then you just get left hanging. So yeah, it's crazy.
I mean, look, I've spoken to agents before, some top-end agents. I mean, John Viola, for example, a Scottish. I mean, one of the first FIFA agents out there, and a few others as well, who got players like Amadou Onana, his move to away from Belgium. For me, what it seems to be is there's a lot of, there's often going to be very good apples, but there's always going to be one that's bad in the whole bunch of apples, or something. That's how the saying goes. And for these sort of agents, a lot of them will be trustworthy, but then some of them you may see on LinkedIn that don't use this guy because they're scamming you and things like that. As a player, I mean, you must have gone through a few agents and seen it with your friends. Does this happen more often than not? I mean, do agents go out there to scam people?
Yeah, to be honest, I would say from my experience, 80% of the agents, they are not all try to scam you, but there's very few quality agents, because mostly the quality agents, they will try to make money with the big Premier League players and stuff like that. So if you're not at that top level, you deal with a lot of black sheep. And yeah, I just advise people to really be careful, which agent you choose to work with, which agent you choose to sign with. Yeah, just be careful, because the truth is, there's a lot of, I think it's improving now. I think FIFA is trying to do something. Now there's like you have to pass certain tests and whatsoever, exams or whatsoever to obtain a license to be a FIFA licensed agent. It's improving slowly. But yeah, I've made many experiences with agents. They promise you things and they don't keep to it, and yeah, a lot of shady things.
I mean, I remember hearing about a Nigerian who saved up a lot of money. I mean, they wouldn't have loads of money as it is, as they said to me. And they've saved up all this money to go abroad, to go and have this great opportunity, for it to fall through, not to happen. And all their family was left with limited money and resources to continue to live and essentially pay for all the bills and family and food. Again, this is something that's very relatable to maybe a few people, where the club owners are taking passports so their players can't leave the country or leave the club. And just before you tell me about that instance, I mean, why would is it normal for you to be at a club and they say, please can I have your passport? Is that normal to happen?
Yeah, I think so. Sometimes it's like if you arrive in a country and they want to like, because you need a visa sometimes. So once I mean they took my passport as well but they gave it back later on. When I went to when I went to Malaysia, for example, when I first arrived, I was on a tourist visa.
Hmm.
So after 3 months, the tourist visa expires, and then they'll ask for your passport because they'll have to put the employment visa, the work visa, whatsoever, and then you'll get it back usually a few weeks later. But what some clubs do is they take the passports and then they just keep them, and and if and then they use it as a form of to put pressure on players, and to keep them, and to not allow them to leave the country. So yeah, it's absolutely crazy what some of these people do.
I mean, we talk about club owners, but now we're talking about away fans. And, in England, we have the few. We have, Millwall to just name one of the clubs. I mean, well, known around the world for being basically hooligans and idiots. And you know what, really, really, as someone who's not that crazy, I mean, going to games and looking to punch people up, that's not anything that I would do. When you're going to these games, and I mean, from a player's point of view, you must think that these guys are just through the roof. I mean, if I'm going to a local team or the local team's quite a big team around here, and you're going to this game and you just see these people who are really like trying to have a fight with another opposition fan for somebody that they're probably never going to talk to, never going to meet, and they're never going to see again. So for me, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But for a player to go through this pressure, I mean, to see not just the fans in the stadium, but to see these hooligans and these players these fans that are coming to your games to now not just watch it, to now basically say, if you don't win, there's going to be some consequences on social media. Maybe they'll see you in person. As a player, is that more additional pressure and maybe not needed for your own sets of fans?
Definitely, it's definitely pressure. I mean, we all love the fans, and we all love passionate fans,
Of course.
But there's
Of course.
definitely a limit, There's definitely a limit that that if you lose or something, I think there's no player that loses, intentionally. I mean, they all want to win and stuff, and of course, sometimes the performances are a bit upsetting and the results are upsetting. But that's still no reason to threaten players and to do crazy things and use violence or whatsoever. We all love passionate fans, but please respect the players.
I mean, absolutely. And, it's really a shame to see players like Dali Ali. I mean, look at what he did. And he's still very young, but just look at the stuff that he did with Tottenham, with MK Dons, one of the best players in the world. And then, I mean, obviously there's been some behind the scenes things with him. But then I mean, look, people like yourself who have gone out there their whole lives, working every day, trying hard. I mean, Hyacinth, for example, was training at 6 a.m. to kicking the ball against his wall for hours a day. And it's just no way would you waste all of your life to do that, to not even have the chance to go pro at times, but to go pro and then to go ahead and intentionally lose. For these national team players who are having to go to stadiums in war tanks, I mean, look, war tanks that probably weren't loaded up with machine guns or whatever have you, but war tanks nonetheless. What country is that in as well?
That's in Indonesia. So yeah, Indonesia is they have a massive fan support. It's actually a very huge country as well in terms of the population, and they have a huge rivalry with a neighboring country, which is Malaysia. And I mean, I didn't get to experience it, but many of my friends have experienced it and told me about it. Really, when they play in Indonesia and they go to the stadium, they go in war tanks because people there, if they go in a bus, the people will literally like throw stones and stuff like that and try to hurt them. So the police and then the military, they will prepare war tanks before the game, and then the players will enter the war tanks, and then with the war tanks enter the stadium, and only when they're in the stadium safe, then they will then they will be let out. So yeah, again, this is crazy. I mean, I haven't seen something like that in Europe. This is only in Asia in some parts. It's crazy. It's dangerous. People are maybe they're not educated, and I don't know what, and they completely yeah. That's just madness. That's just madness. Yeah.
Do they ruin the game? Do those sets of the minority of fans, do they ruin your experience, but also other people's experience?
Yeah, of course. I mean, these for me, I don't even see those people as fans. They're just idiots and crazy people. You see, I also have to really stress this, that 90% of the fans are amazing. Over in Asia, Europe, wherever, they're amazing. But there's always a small percentage, and then they shine a bad light on the rest of the fans, which are actually very respectful, and they give amazing support. But such a small percentage, can destroy the reputation of a whole country or fan base or whatsoever, which is actually quite sad.
Again, these stories are not fake, right? And I can't stress this enough, because some of the stories you'd expect to find in a comic book or in a book that is just made up out of nowhere. Clubs failing to pay players in salaries for 3 months and still expecting them to play due to the respect of the club. I mean, there's absolutely no respect going on there. But again, I mean, probably something you may have experienced.
Thankfully, I've never experienced it. I think I was always very fortunate to be in good clubs with good management, especially in Asia. Like we mentioned before, I've been in really great clubs. So fortunately, I've never got to experience stuff like that. But yeah, many of my friends, many of them, especially in Asia. But it also there's even an instance in Europe, where clubs they fail to pay their players, sponsor pulled out or whatsoever. And I mean, at the end of the day, football is still a job, and players have to feed their families. It's only right for a player to leave a club and then look for another employer if they are not getting paid, But yeah, it happens in Asia, even in Malaysia. There's quite a few teams, in the past that fail to pay their players, and it's very tough on the players.
I mean, it's something that not even the manager would have control over, because obviously the hierarchy in the football club would mean that the manager might not even get paid at times as well. I mean, look, when we're talking about managers, what would your ideal manager be? And you might say Pep Guardiola, but you might say Jurgen Klopp, Sir Alex Ferguson. Maybe let's take out those three. I mean, who would you have as your ideal manager, and why? Do you like a tactician, a disciplinarian? I mean, what sort of manager would your be ideal choice?
Yeah, probably for me, it would have to be a good mix. I love that Pep Guardiola is just probably a mastermind in football. Tactically amazing. But I think, like, in terms of the man management side, who gets out most of their players is probably Jurgen Klopp, and then of course Alex is absolutely is an absolute legend. I think he's also someone who can bring the best out of players and is very good at man management. Knows when players need the hairdryer treatment, and when players need a little bit arm around their shoulder and stuff like that. So I think for me personally, I think I do well under a coach that gives me trust and then treats me well, and it makes me feel good and confident, and then I'm willing to run for him and fight for him.
The instability of being a professional footballer in countries like Asia, in Europe, anywhere in the world. Maybe not so much in America, because I think that's a bit more, towards the lower levels in America for people that are coming over from England, etc. The instability of being a pro is something that hits the deck quite often. And again, you said to me that if you're not Mbappe, you're going to have a very unstable time in 6-month contracts, 1-year contracts at the most in most situations. Talk to me through that, and the press, having that pressure on you to, if you don't do well, you're going to be leaving at the end of the year.
Yeah. I mean. That's the reality of football. You see what people see a lot on TV and stuff. They watch Bundesliga, they watch Premier League, and they don't realize that is just the top of the top. That's the tip of the iceberg. That is the top 1%, and that is for the majority of people. That is not the reality. So if you're at the top, you're financially, usually you make enough money that you're set for life. So if something happens or whatever, you still have the finances to live a good life and a secured life. But if you're at the lower levels, you have to fight every year, new contract. You have to find a new team, new country. You have to move, so it's very unstable in terms of, I know teams in Asia. The season only runs for 10 months, so the clubs only give out contracts for 10 months, and so, like, a lot of players are left without a contract and without an income for 2 months of the year, and for some, they have family and stuff like that. It's not so easy. They have to move places. yeah, the reality of football is that it's actually very unstable. Unless you're at the top of the top, everything is very well organized and taken care of. But slightly below that, even already, a lot of players struggle. It's very, very tough.
On to the fun part, your FIFA card rating. Let's talk through that. I mean, you never know. You could be on the game in the next few seasons, maybe even next season. So your pace, what would you give your pace on FIFA?
Oh, I'm not. I'm a very slow player. I'm not very fast. I'm not gifted with a lot of speed. So probably 60.
That's more of a centre back's pace, that. But we'll let you off. Shooting. I mean, that must be quite high.
Yeah, I would say. I don't want to go too high because later, my teammates or whatsoever see this and then they're gonna talk. They're gonna mock me. No, I would say like technique, all the technical stuff. So shooting is one of my strengths. So I would say 80, 85. 80.
No, that's a good rating. And pace.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, passing. What would that be? I mean, you might have a good distribution.
Yes, that is definitely passing is definitely I would say my main strength. My passing ability, my passing range. In the high 80s, 88, something like that.
And you're dribbling. I mean, look, when you're in the middle of the park, you need to be able to dribble in certain situations, get past a few people on an ease as well. I mean, again, that must be up in the high ranks.
Yeah, I would say I'm not a dribbler, but I know how to get out of tight situations. I would give it a 78, something like that.
When you're defending now against other people, maybe you're out of your position in certain situations, your defending attribute, what would that be?
Also a solid 80. I think I'm quite aggressive and good in defending.
I mean, you mentioned being aggressive, your physicality?
Also a solid 80, I try to hit the gym as often as possible. So yeah.
And then your ideal club.
My ideal club would be Real Madrid.
Hey, Jude Bellingham and Armin Maier link up.
Yes.
Even Chirmeni and Camavinga, you never ever know. Armin, I said to you, it might not even be over an hour. We've reached that by 7 minutes. Armin,
yes.
Absolute pleasure to have you on.
Pleasure's all on my side, mate. Thank you so much.